Hi there, this video is all about using color range to select skin. We're gonna make cool little masks like this. So we can isolate the skin and do things like this. Ready? Okay, just to give a bit more fullness to the skin. And if you ask me, do I use this technique to give myself a tan in my profile social media photos? I'll deny it. So as long as you promise not to go out and check my social media photos, I will show you how to use color range to select skin. All right, in your exercise files, open up color range 4 and 5. These images are from Unsplash, and this one's from Scott Walters, and the next one we'll do is from Dan7Kids. Thank you guys. So in color range 4, let's go to select, let's go to color range. And what we're gonna use is the option here that says skin tones. Okay, so we're probably defaulting to sample colors. Let's go to skin tones. If yours is not by default, switch it to grayscale. Turn on detect faces. It looks for basically looks for two eyes and then kind of adjusts a little bit. I find sometimes it works really good and sometimes it's not. Just turn it on and off and see if your selection gets better or worse. Then it's playing around with the fuzziness. Okay, obviously too high, it's gonna have too much of the background selected. So I want it to be reasonably high. And it's working okay. There's lots of similar colors in here. So my guess is about 30 to 40% of images, okay, at least portraiture that I've got, this technique will work as good as we're doing here. The rest of the time, there's just too much color in the image that's very similar to skin and this technique doesn't work. So I wanna kind of give you honest examples, I guess. So this one here is pretty good because there's a nice clear definition between the hair and the background on most parts. Same with the shirt, there's a good enough differentiation. It's not perfect. By no means, but there's still a bit of work to do. So let's click OK. So we've got a selection. What I want to do is adjusting skin. It really depends on what you need to do. She has a particularly fine skin tone. They're not blown out. There's no color cast. So what I would tend to do is with the selection is go to vibrance. I just want to lift it up a little bit. So adjustments, I'm going to use this one here called vibrance. I love vibrance. I'm going to yank it right up to show you what it does. Can you see it added I've gone too far, but it's added kind of a lot of fullness to it. So I wouldn't generally have it that high. I'm just doing kind of slight adjustments. So on, off, it's a little hard to see about how far is too far. That's fine. The problem is it's affecting a lot of the rest of the image. You might decide actually that's fine. Nobody's gonna notice. But let's say you do want to isolate it just for the face. Now what we can do is use our brush tool to paint it out. And I'm gonna show you a nice little extra trick. If you're on a Mac, look down to your keyboard and hold down the Option key. If you're on a PC, hold down the Alt key. And all you need to do is click your mask here. The cool thing about that is you haven't wrecked anything or changed anything or made it black and white. It's just showing you a big version of your mask, which makes it easy to paint. So I've got my brush tool selected. I'm going to pick an appropriate brush size and hardness. I'm going to get mine up to about 87. Make sure black's my foreground color and just kind of paint out. I'm actually going to get a lot bigger. And just paint out the bits I don't want included. So use color range to kind of get started and get a lot of the hard work done, but like so many things in Photoshop, there are just so many other annoying things that ruin your perfect example. Okay, so in this case, I'm just going around. There's a nice little black bleed around the edges of them. You might not get this lucky, okay? But like I said, it works for enough of the things that I work on to give it a go, because it doesn't take very long, right? I've been teaching you how to do it and we've only been at this a couple of minutes. Brush size down. Weird straw thing. I think we're close enough to this being okay. The hair here is probably the worst part because it's such a close color to the skin. But now we've just got the skin selected. So we use color range and skin tones to get it kind of started and then we paint out the rest. There's a lot of this in Photoshop where you get a selection that's pretty close and then you tidy it up with the brush tool. To get it back to how it was before, the same key, so hold down Option on a Mac, Alt on a PC, and just click on the mask again. Now that vibrance layer is only adjusting the skin. You'll see up here it's disappeared, so I can click on the word vibrance and it's back again. Yank up the saturation to give her an ugly suntan. Okay, so I use vibrance just to enhance the colors. If you are finding you might use the same selection on say levels or curves, depending on what you want to do to the skin. I want to show you one last little trick, A, to show you some extra shortcuts, but B, how I give somebody that this woman here, this girl here has a fine skin palette. Let's say though that it's your profile photo and you're looking pretty washed out or don't have a tan. Let's say tan, that's what we want, some richness in the skin. This is my trick for tans. So what I want to do is first is the shortcut. I want that selection back that we did with select color range and then blacking out the background. So I don't want to have to do all that again. What I can do to get the selection is just hold down the Command key on a Mac or the Control key on a PC and just click on the mask and it loads it as a selection. Super handy little trick. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go adjustments, I'm going to go hue and saturation, I'm going to go to colorize, I'm going to yank up the saturation, and I'm going to find a color, okay, that I want this person to be. So we're going to be in the we don't want them to be red. We want them to be kind of like orangey, okay, orangey yellow. Okay, I have the saturation up high just so I can get my hue right because we don't want them that color. What I also want to do is play around with my blending modes or my layer modes. So with hue and saturation 1, go to normal, and I find this always works with soft light. So it's still too high, but you can see it's blending in a lot more. And I'm just going to lower the saturation until there's something like she had a final color already. So I'm not going to have to do much. Okay, so what I might do is, I wanted to show you here, but I'm going to go quite low because she didn't really need any of this extra color. Let's zoom in, see how orange I've made her. Okay, you got to decide how kind of rich you think they need to be. With this layer selected as well, I'm probably going to lower the opacity a little bit. So it's all about subtle adjustments. You can see they're on. I'm going to turn both of these on, both of them off. So I haven't made much adjustment because the photographer, Scott Walters here, had a pretty nice original image. If you're working on your own work or your own profile photo, you might find that you need to have some of these settings a little bit higher, like vibrance and saturation, just to give yourself a bit of a tan or a bit of healthiness or color. Regardless of how you think my tan on this girl is, you might think I've ruined it. What's important is the technique. So we started with select, color range, and we use skin tones. And like I said, it kind of works really good on about 30 to 40% of images, as long as there's a clear contrast with the background. And then you have to blot out the background with a big paintbrush. We learned the cool shortcut by holding down the Alt key on a PC and Option key on a Mac, just to get that one little layer selected. It makes it so much easier for tidying up masks. Same key down to click it again to turn it off. And the other really important shortcut was the Command key on a Mac, Control key on a PC, and just clicking the mask, and you get it loaded as a selection. And we're going to use that a few times throughout this course. Deselect. The reason I got you to open up color range 5 is that there's going to be lots of examples that just don't work, and this is going to be one of them. So let me show you why. Zoom in a little bit. Okay, select, color range. We're going to pick skin tones, detect faces. You can see the big problem. Her hair is very similar skin tone to her skin, and there's all the stuff in the background that's all very similar. So I can play around with this for a longer like, but really it's not going to give me a great example. We're going to get into something called a channel mask later on, which will do better for this. But I wanted to show you some kind of realistic examples wherein it doesn't work. Love color range when it works. All right, that is it for skin tones and color range. Let's get into the next example.